You apply the steroid cream. The red, scaly plaques fade for a few days, but the moment you stop, the flare-up comes back with a vengeance. You have been told psoriasis is a skin condition. But what if the battlefield isn't on your skin at all? What if the root cause of your autoimmune response is hiding deep inside your digestive tract? Today, we expose the gut-skin axis. This video is for educational purposes only. Psoriasis is a systemic autoimmune condition. Do not abruptly stop taking biologic medications or prescribed steroids without consulting your dermatologist or rheumatologist, as this can cause a severe disease rebound. High-dose vitamin therapy must be monitored with regular blood tests. And if you are living with psoriasis, I want to start with something important. I see how exhausting this is. The itching, the burning, the flaking, the constant planning around your skin, the frustration of having a treatment help for a moment and then fail you again. That is not weakness. That is not lack of discipline. That is what it feels like when a chronic inflammatory condition keeps hijacking your daily life. One of the biggest myths in dermatology is the idea that if a problem shows up on the skin must be the only problem. But skin is not an isolated organ. It is an endpoint, a reflection surface. In functional medicine, we say, what happens in the gut often shows up on the skin. That does not mean every case of psoriasis begins in the gut, and it does not mean the skin is just a symptom. It means the immune system, the digestive tract, the nervous system, and the skin are in constant conversation. So when someone uses only topical steroids, they may be calming the fire that is visible at the surface, but they may not be addressing the signals feeding that fire underneath. It is like painting over a wall when the plumbing behind it is leaking. The surface may look better for a while, but if the underlying pressure is still there, the problem often returns. And that is why this conversation matters. Because when we shift our attention from only suppressing the visible plaque to understanding the internal inflammatory terrain, we open a different kind of strategy. Not a miracle. Not a magic cure. A more complete, root-cause conversation that can complement your current medical plan and help you think more clearly about what your body may be asking for. In the next section, we will look at the gut wall itself, and why a one-cell thick barrier can have a surprisingly powerful impact on skin health. To understand the gut-skin connection, we have to start with the gut wall itself. Your intestinal lining is not a thick fortress. It is an extraordinarily thin barrier, only one cell layer thick in many regions, designed to do two things at once: absorb what your body needs, and keep what should stay inside the gut from crossing into the bloodstream. That balancing act is controlled by microscopic structures called tight junctions. When those tight junctions are functioning well, they act like a selective gate. But when the barrier is stressed, the gate becomes less selective. In functional medicine, this is often described as intestinal permeability, or leaky gut. That term is simple, but the biology underneath it is serious. The lining is no longer regulating passage as precisely as it should. Several factors can push that barrier out of balance. Chronic stress can alter gut motility and immune signaling. Repeated antibiotic exposure can disrupt the microbiome ecosystem. In some people, gluten and other trigger foods may aggravate the intestinal barrier. And when the microbiome becomes imbalanced, the entire gut environment can shift in a way that makes the lining more vulnerable. This is not about blame. It is about physiology. When the barrier is compromised, tiny particles that should have stayed inside the digestive tract can slip through the gaps. That may include partially digested food proteins, microbial fragments, and other inflammatory signals. Once those particles reach the bloodstream, the immune system does what it is designed to do: it reacts. But in a sensitized system, that reaction can become exaggerated, persistent, and systemic. This is the key point. The gut is not just a tube for digestion. It is an immune interface. A large portion of the immune system is stationed around the gut because the body is constantly deciding what to tolerate and what to defend against. When that decision-making environment becomes unstable, the immune system can stay on high alert long after the original trigger has passed. So when someone says, "My skin keeps flaring for no obvious reason," this is one of the first places I look. The integrity of the gut barrier. Because if the gateway is compromised, the inflammatory signal does not stay in the gut. It travels. And in psoriasis, that can become part of the larger immune story. Now here is where the story becomes more interesting. Psoriasis is not simply a problem of skin appearance. It is an immune-mediated inflammatory disease in which overactive immune signaling drives skin cells to multiply far too quickly, creating the thick, scaly plaques people know all too well. In other words, the visible plaque is the end result of an immune conversation that has gone off track. In the gut-skin axis model, one major driver of that immune noise can be intestinal dysbiosis. When the microbiome is disrupted, the gut environment may become more inflammatory and the epithelial barrier more vulnerable. Some reviews describe this as a pathway toward increased intestinal permeability, where microbial fragments and endotoxin-like signals can cross into systemic circulation and amplify inflammation. Once those inflammatory signals enter circulation, the immune system does what it was designed to do. It reacts. But in psoriasis, that reaction can become excessive and persistent. T cells, keratinocytes, and inflammatory mediators all become part of the cascade. The skin then receives the message to speed up production. And instead of a normal renewal cycle, cells accumulate on the surface far too fast. That is why psoriasis can feel so relentless. The body is not just dry skin from the outside. It is a systemic inflammatory loop from the inside. And this is also why a gut-centered strategy can matter as an adjunct. When you reduce upstream immune irritation, you may reduce the intensity of the signal reaching the skin. That does not replace your prescription plan. It helps explain why the flare can be so stubborn in the first place. At this point, the strategy becomes clearer. You do not start by attacking the skin harder. You start by asking what is feeding the inflammation. Psoriasis is a chronic immune-mediated disease in which the immune system becomes overactive and drives skin cells to multiply too quickly. That means any plan that helps reduce inflammatory load upstream may be valuable as an adjunct to standard care, not a replacement for it. That begins with food awareness. For some people, specific triggers such as gluten appear to matter, and the literature suggests dietary approaches may help selected patients, though the evidence is mixed and not one size fits all. The practical move is not random restriction. It is a structured, thoughtful process. Identify patterns, reduce obvious triggers, and work with a qualified professional so you do not create nutrient gaps while trying to calm the immune system. From there, the goal is barrier repair. Nutrients like l-glutamine are often discussed because experimental and review data suggest it can support intestinal permeability, enterocyte health, and tight junction function. But this is not a magic switch. It is one tool in a broader gut repair strategy, and it should be used thoughtfully, especially if someone has complex medical conditions or is already on prescription therapy. So the foundation is simple to say, but powerful to execute. Reduce the triggers, support the gut lining, and keep your dermatologist in the loop. That is how you begin to calm the terrain before you ever talk about advanced protocols. Once you have started removing obvious triggers and supporting the gut barrier, the next step is ecosystem repair. That means the microbiome has to be rebalanced, because the gut is not only about digestion. It is also an immune training environment. In psoriasis, the broader scientific picture increasingly points to gut-skin communication as a real biologic pathway, although the strength of the evidence still varies by intervention and person. This is why probiotics and prebiotics keep showing up in psoriasis discussions. A 2024 meta-analysis found probiotic supplementation could be a new treatment option, but the authors also noted that larger randomized trials are still needed. So the scientific position is promising, but not hype, supportive, adjunctive, and still developing. That is also where commercial gut-skin formulas come in. A product such as Neotonics is marketed as a gut and skin supplement combining probiotics, prebiotics, and botanicals, including Bacillus coagulans, inulin, dandelion, ginger, slippery elm bark, lion's mane, and fennel. I am not presenting it as a cure for psoriasis, but as an example of the kind of multi-ingredient support people often explore when they are working on the gut-skin axis. The key point is this: work with your dermatologist. Do not stop biologics abruptly or change prescribed steroids without medical supervision. The goal is not to reject your treatment plan. The goal is to build a stronger foundation underneath it, so your body has a better chance of moving out of constant inflammatory alarm. If you want the blueprint, check the link in the description for the gut-skin axis healing framework. And remember, any biologic or steroid changes must be made with your prescribing specialist, because sudden withdrawal can trigger a severe rebound.